Well, good morning. This is our Saturday morning microdosing group, and I am going to start off our discussion today based off of the December newsletter that just came out this week. My food for thought that I put out there was titled Me, Myself, and I. And we talk a little bit in there about the idea of the self and what the goals are, and how a lot of the definitions and the way that we define ourselves comes through these expectations that have been given to us, but the conflict, excuse me, that arises from the expectations that have been given to us lead to things like a fear of death, self-loathing, status anxiety, or various social comparisons, boredom, always looking for something to change, something to be different. Stress about planning for the future, the idea of I don't like where I am now, so how am I even going to know what I want? Or I have this idea of what I think I want, how am I going to achieve it? Because I don't seem able to achieve what I've established as a goal for myself. That certainly leads to things like an identity crisis. Who am I and what's my purpose? Guilt. Why do I even feel this way? Why am I treating others in a way that I don't like? Why am I showing up in a way that I don't feel is authentic to me? So that inner conflict with guilt, depressive thinking, which all humans, 100% of humans struggle with at some point in time. And then loneliness. It can be extremely lonely to be in a place of either deciding that we don't like ourselves or that we're not happy with our life or that we perceive that other people are judging us in a certain way. So when we have this enhanced focus on the idea of the self, which is what we often refer to as ego, life becomes about performance rather than experience. Well, performance in what way? Performance is not just do other people think I'm successful, however that's defined, but it's I think about me, what I think other people think about me. And that's where we're performing not for ourselves, but for the validation of how we think other people are perceiving us. So we're constantly managing those ideas of how others perceive us, and then we are protecting the ideas of who we think we should be. So that's a lot of words. Let's break that down a little bit. If raised in an environment, and we're going to use a very just United States of America average assumption, I think that could be considered across society here in America. What does that look like? You should have a family of some sort. That definition has certainly become a little bit more broadened over the past century or so, or I'm sorry, past across the past decade or so. So have a family, own a home, drive a vehicle that shows certain status, pay your taxes, get along with your neighbors, have a job that has some sort of title or idea attached to it that you can impress other people with. I do this or that, and I'm in charge of this, that, and the other. And then have some sort of monetary idea to show. My bank account looks like this, my 401k looks like this, my investments are doing this or that. I'm set up for what I'm going to term the American dream or the American lifestyle. Every single one of those things, though, has a very specific concept attached to it. Just if we start with the term family, all of a sudden, you are not sufficient as one individual. In order to be looked at as successful within that definition, you have to have somebody significant attached to you that we're going to call a partner or a spouse, and then typically offspring of some sort. Whether adopted, biological, doesn't really matter. But that's what we deem family, and maybe a dog or cat or two or three. So right there, we have that very first definition that says you just as yourself are not enough.
Mhm.
That's a huge one because the biggest conflict in most of our lives is with other human beings. So we define success as your attachment with another human being or multiples of them. And then we also say, But because I have this conflict in my life and I'm judging you by that, you should have all of these conflicts in your life too, because relationships are what? They're inherently selfish. So relationships are self-serving, which is in essence a piece of survival. They bring conflict, but if you don't have them, then the perception is that other people are judging you in a negative way as being less than because you don't have it. And I will tell you, as a therapist, every couple that I work with starts to question whether or not they would be happier being single, and every single person I work with thinks they would be happier if they were within a couplehood of some sort. So, always thinking that there's something different that's going to make us happier based off change. And we haven't even talked about money. All we've talked about right now is relationships. So that first idea of ourself is within relationship with other humans. And it starts from the time that we're a child, the relationship with the parent or guardian that's significant in our lives, or extended family members. And then friends, as soon as we enter the institution that we call school, whether it's private, public, home, whatever, now we're supposed to have friends. And what are friends? Friends are other humans who have also been told that they should get along with you and everyone should agree and play nice together and coexist. So then we carry that into elementary school. Friendships are still a little bit easier in elementary school, right? Because the brain is the most neuroplastic, to use that term, when we're young. Humans are born with a high degree of neuroplasticity. That's how we learn. It becomes more fixed and rigid over time. When we talk about rigid thinking, most 5-year-olds, you're not going to say, boy, that 5-year-old really has some rigid thinking. But you can certainly say that 45-year-old has some rigid thinking because it develops over time in our survival mechanisms, the way that we perceive our experiences, the things that we're told, the culture that we're raised in. So we've got these little humans that pretty much get along for the most part. And you start seeing some of that idea of self-importance come out, certainly around 2 to 3, where they're exerting some independence, realizing that no is a word, that's an option. They can have a strong stance with that. But then we move into teenager/young adulthood, and there's been a lot of life experiences at that point. Now you've been on the planet for 16 to 20 years. It's a lot that happens in that amount of time. We're starting to really create an idea of not just what do we think about ourselves, but what do we think everybody else wants? I think one of the most interesting places to hang out is a high school football game or a high school parking lot. Probably partly because I personally have a couple high schoolers right now, so I spend time doing that. But you see human beings of every shape, size, color, style, all of them in groups by themselves, in couples. And it's just such this little microcosm of our society as a whole. And every single one of them walk into that building every day thinking, how is today going to go? How are other people, my peers, my teachers, my administrators, going to treat me today? And what do I think of myself because of how I get treated? If we're doing that at 14, 15, 16, how much more are we still doing that at 26, 30, 36, 40, 48, 50, 100, until we pause and say, oh, wow, my whole life has been about performing for the ideas that have been handed to me. And what's the most common question when you're talking to someone in high school? Maybe around junior, senior year, so 17, 18 years old. So what are you going to do after this? What do you want to be when you grow up? What are you going to do with your life? 20, the age of 20 is about your quarter life. And somehow we expect, our society has said, you should know what you want to do for the next 3/4 of your life by the age of 20. Pick a thing to go to school for, pick a career, and certainly historically it's been stay in that career. What is a resume supposed to look like? A resume is supposed to, and again, I'm air quoting that word idea, supposed to have a couple jobs on it with an extended tenure of here's all the things I did at these couple jobs. Well, how are you really getting life experience when you've put yourself into a box of this is where I'm supposed to be and this is what I'm sticking with? Now, for those of you in HR and all of that, please do not send me emails about, job hopping and people not staying with jobs. That is not the point. But even if it is, why would we label that good or bad? Experiences look different for each person. But again, that right there is a societal expectation. You are viewed as a helpful employee if you have tenure at a certain company for an extended period of time. Doesn't matter that maybe you absolutely hated your life, dreaded every day, have started becoming an alcoholic and a food addict because of depressive symptoms from staying at that job. Doesn't matter. We want to see tenure. What did you do? What did you accomplish there? That's not healthy, but it is a societal expectation. And then what do we attach to that? The idea of money. It is not a secret that money makes the world go round. It just does. To pretend that money is not important is a pretense that is self-protective. Anybody who is standing in line at a food bank because they cannot afford to get groceries will tell you that money doesn't buy happiness, but neither does poverty. That happiness is an idea. But money, as far as making the world go round, is a tool that is incredibly helpful. So the goal with your microdosing and having this enhanced neuroplasticity is not to convince yourself you don't need money. It is to recognize that you are not defined by your bank account. That doesn't say anything about your value as a human. How do you want to get money? That's personal, that's individual. You decide what that looks like for you. But if your only goal is to have money, you're missing the experience of life. Nobody says at the age of 12, my goal is to go to college and be a workaholic. All I want to do is work to have money. Why? Because at 12, we still like nature. We like dogs and cats and camping and being outside and friends and not having an alarm clock and not having every hour of the day dictated to us and what we should or should not be doing and being asked about what our accomplishments were for the day. Why is it that kids love winter break and most parents dread it? Because the kids are like, woohoo, the reminder that every hour doesn't need to be accounted for and we're not being measured by a grade and by a system. We can just enjoy being human beings. And the parent mindset is, wow, I already have these 50,000 things I get done on a weekly basis. And now I also need to make sure that my kids that are home are entertained and safe and taken care of. And how does that impact my schedule? And by the way, Christmas is coming, so I hope you have an extra, X number of dollars laying around to shop. Again, another societal expectation. So if you haven't completely given up on the idea of life and you're still in group, thank you for being here. You're still listening. Thanks for hanging in because there is a light that creates a possibility to not be stuck in this cycle all the time. Life should not be about performance. It should be about experience. What are you experiencing on a daily basis? What definitions or ideas are you giving to those experiences that you have? What do you mean what I'm giving to it? What story are you telling yourself about the experiences that you're having? Because until there's a story or an idea attached to it, you're just being, which is your most natural state. It's when we assign definition and meaning to certain experiences that they become what we call good or bad, positive or negative, happy, sad, pick whatever words you want to use. That neuroplasticity that we're born with, like I talked about, becomes very fixed and diminishes over time. There's a lot of things that we have come up with to do to try and create a greater sense of peace. And I'm going to be free in some of these ideas. Meditation, prayer, yoga, silence. Those are go-tos that we think, oh, people that do those things have less stress. Possibly. Those are all things that require a doing. And they require doing and doing and doing and doing and doing. Because what happens when yoga's over? Oh, let me check my phone. Wow, I have 15 emails and 8 text messages that I need to get back to, and that was in an hour. Maybe I don't have time for yoga, or good thing I did yoga because that was my 1 hour of sitting still. Has that enhanced my neuroplasticity? No, it has just quieted me and slowed me for a specific amount of time. And lengthened my muscles and provided a lot of stretching. So physical benefits, right? But the concept here is these are things we have to keep going back to. They are not structurally and functionally changing the brain long term. They're things that we do all the time. Then we have the alternate side, which instead of choosing things that quiet the mind, we choose things to distract us. Go shopping, hang out with other people, jump on social media, play video games, watch movies. Again, nothing wrong, bad, harmful in any of those things in and of themselves. But why are we doing them? Can do them to pass time, can do them for moments of pleasure. But if you're doing things in order to try and escape from your thoughts, that is an unhealthy and unhelpful coping mechanism because guess what? Your thoughts are still there. Again, nothing changed long term. The shiny new fun thing that you bought somehow in your house doesn't look as shiny and new and fun 3 weeks later. It's just another thing to dust or step around or pay off. If we want to really go back to that natural self, the way that we entered the world, the neuroplasticity ability that we had, the quietness of the mind, the removal of so many of these ideas that we have been handed and then just taken on and absorbed and incorporated into the DNA and fabric of how we live every day. You have to change the brain at a structural level. It has to actually process information in a different way. And that can be accomplished with psilocybin. That is exactly what psilocybin does. It enhances neuroplasticity, connects to our 5-HT2A serotonin receptors, shifting how the brain processes and responds to information. Enhances that brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is what contributes to neuroplasticity. But what good is neuroplasticity and the brain's ability to change if we are not putting in different information? It's like having one of those really beautiful bowls that we buy at Pottery Barn or Williams Sonoma or some fun frou-frou kitchen supply place, and then we set the bowl on the counter and it's just a decoration. Nothing ever goes in it. It's pretty, but it's useful when it's holding some rolls or mashed potatoes or banana pudding. Can tell I'm a little bit, got some Southern roots in me. So same with neuroplasticity. It's great to have that. Get out of that rigid thinking, quiet down the mind, slow that default mode network. Let our ideas and perspectives soften, be open to new things, but then put something different in there. Give yourself permission to really question the expectations, the ideas, the things that you have and that you carry around with on a daily basis. So much of what we do is rooted in this fear. And the fear is really that the fraudulent things that we're doing every single day are going to be exposed and people are going to see us for who we are, which we have defined as lacking. If I'm driving a car that I can't afford, or if I'm driving a car I can afford, but that's how I define myself, and I want everybody to think of me because of that, and then my car gets wrecked and now I'm driving a car that I wouldn't typically buy, I'm going to think about myself differently because so much of my identity is in what kind of car do I drive? What kind of clothes do I wear? Am I standing in the line at a food bank or not? That doesn't make anybody better or worse, but it sure makes things easier when you are not the one in the food bank line because you went to the grocery store and had money to buy what you want. Value, though, of the two human beings is not shifted. And I have personally met people far happier in a food bank line than with millions of dollars in their bank accounts and investment accounts. Because the idea of the self and how we define ourselves is inherent and inside of us, not based off of everything that we have or everything that we do. So I'm opening up to the group. Comments, ideas, what has come to mind with some of these reminders about life being an experience and not a performance? What are some expectations that you have taken on that you feel like could be helpful to potentially shift, or maybe that have already started to shift for you with microdosing, even if you're just getting started?
Well, I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but um, I think the thing that has helped me change for me is that instead of seeing things as good and bad, that take the bad off of things and it's just what happened. It's not necessarily bad, like we um, get the emotion with it, and the emotion says, "Oh, this is horrible and it's bad, and you should, or you've been a bad person for doing this. It's maybe it was just something that you had to do, or something, so that it's not." I guess I've tried to take been trying to take the emotion out of it,
Mhm.
so that it's not so beat yourself up about bad, but because negative and positive have to be there. It's the way the life is built,
Mhm.
and to make one better than the other is um it's it wears you out. It wears you out.
Exactly. Yeah, thank you, Jana. That's that idea of being worn out is where so many of us end up. I feel like I can probably pretty safely say 100% of humans at some point in time feel exhausted, not just physically exhausted, but mentally, emotionally, just done. I've reached the end. What am I doing? Why am I doing this? And sometimes it takes getting to that place to really recognize, "Oh, this isn't working." But the recognizing it's not working is that first step in what do I need to do differently? How do I want to have this experience in life rather than life being the performance that I've come to expect? If I need to show up in this certain way so other people respond to me in a certain way, if I am more in that state of being and experiencing things, then to your point, having that definition of something being good or bad removed, now it's just an experience. doesn't have to mean
Mhm.
anything. We separate that meaning, we separate a lot of that emotion. The emotion is always the complicating factor. Oh, I feel this or I feel that, or someone else says, well, I feel you should be doing this or that. Well, that's great. You keep your feelings and I'll make the decisions for my life. Because when we make decisions just based off feelings, it's so momentary. It's just like saying, well, what's going to make me happy? Well, happiness is experienced in a moment. It's not something to be sought and obtained and grasped. It doesn't last. It's not tangible. It's an experience. So thank you for that reminder of that emotional aspect being connected to it when we allow it, and that being one of the first ways that we recognize, hey, I'm exhausted. I don't think I can continue doing what I've been doing. Great, that's an excellent time to say then, let's stop doing this. And what needs to shift? So there's expectations. What are the expectations that can shift for us?
So, hi Charity, hi everyone.
I know.
Um, I think I am right there. So the thing is, I I might not make sense with what I'm saying because I am highly emotional right now. Um, so been microdosing for a couple years, and I think I got to that point, right? Where I was starting to just live free and enjoy it. But my problem is that my spouse wasn't at the same level as me, and so I restricted myself, um, and I just wasn't going to go there. Not just to be happy, but just to be free, to live in peace. Like, and I just kept trying and trying. And I know that goes back to that damn people pleasing thing. But it wasn't just people pleasing, it was I really, really wanted him to meet me there. And so when you said it's when you get to that point, it's like, okay, well, something does need to change. And that terrifies me because I don't think that we're going to end up, I don't think that our lives are going to go in the same direction. And that, so it's kind of like it's bittersweet because I've done the healing and I still continue to do it. Um, but he's refusing and I don't like who I am. So, one of the main questions you ask is how do I want to show up? And how I show up in this marriage is not how I want to be. And so it terrifies me because I have these, issues with being alone. And it's just like my greatest fear. And that's where I'm at. So I don't know. He struggles with an addiction that's probably been for the, no, I'm 100% sure it's been for our entire marriage. So we'll say 23 years. Um, and just gotten worse, right? But I had my own addictions too. I was addicted to food. I was 400 pounds. I was an alcoholic. I literally just went and bought a freaking pack of cigarettes and smoked a cigarette right now. Uh, and he left. So shit, I don't even know. So is that not like what I wanted anyways? I don't know. I have no idea. All I know is that it's to that point where I don't I felt it and I feel it, but I wasn't going to let myself feel it without him. And that expectation, like you said, like you have to have a spouse and present yourself this way or that way. And, like we never did have babies because I couldn't have children. And I think that's one of the biggest things that he holds against me. Um, and no, I'm not just saying that. Like, it's not just a thought. He's told me before. I found a letter where he said it, like, and I am to him, I'm just like this awful, awful creature. And I'm like everyone else. But it doesn't even matter because I stopped caring how other people see me. He was the only one that I wanted. but I think, and you know, we're like, what makes happiness or whatever, but so like so like I said, very highly emotional right now, but it's to that point where it's like, what is it called? Like where you hit the road, like decisions have to be made, and that's pretty damn scary. But I wouldn't trade the healing that I've done. I wouldn't trade it. It's just very awful because it's going to change. It's going to change everything. But I know it needs to change because like you said, half life, you know, um, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. I don't want to do it anymore. I don't know. Yesterday I went to my niece's dance recital and I was just looking at them and like I was like, you know what? I'm gonna join a dance class. You know how they have like for seniors or I'm still a pretty big girl, like, but I was like, I can do that and I can do expressive dance and like I have so many ideas of the things I want to do, but I can't do them in the situation that I'm in. So it's like it's just scary. And then I also am worried that he might hurt himself too. And I lost my dad to suicide. So, and my dad went through like, because he got sick too and then didn't work, and my spouse doesn't work, and he just lost his whole like sense of manhood and just, you know, like purpose and stuff. And so it's just like a terrifying trauma, but I don't even know. Sorry. Shit. Just it kind of resonated, so I thought I'd throw in my 2 cents.
Well, I think that was more like 5 cents, Nicole, but we'll take it. We appreciate you. We appreciate you bringing that just honest, raw vulnerability. That's exactly what this is about. This is the place that you can have those conversations and nobody sits in a place of judgment. Instead, it's a recognition of, man, we've been really tightly wound up in ideas that have been handed down to us. And when we start to untangle those, there is sometimes an overwhelming emotional response because emotions are a part of our physiological response to life, of just a recognition of the vastness of how much the ideas of other people impact what we allow ourselves to do on a moment to moment, daily, yearly, lifelong basis. And that fear that you've talked about, the fear of being alone, the fear of what's unknown, what others might choose to do. You know, fear is a survival aspect. Fear of dying keeps us from jumping off of cliffs and walking down dark alleys in the middle of the night and avoiding tigers in the wild and not having money, right? We talked about that monetary piece. Don't want to be homeless, don't want to not have food. So there is a fear that is connected to survival, but it's not just that physiological survival, it is the emotional survival as well. And that's where that fear of being alone can often become very overwhelming and emotional because it feels like me against the world. And the recognition that you have everything that you need to survive inside of you. Well, how can I say that? Because I can say that about every single person. Because you're here. Look what you have survived. Every single human has been through their own unique experiences, and every single person that is still on this planet has survived up to this point. Why then do we turn inside our own little brain and say, oh, but I don't know if I'm capable of surviving if something changes? And I felt that, so that's not a demeaning question. I've had that thought. I don't think I'll survive if da 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 happens. I'm in a situation, I don't see a way out. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. So that is not an uncommon or irrational thought, but is a thought to be noticed. And then the thought after that is, why wouldn't you survive? But we shift what we call the idea of good. You're not surviving from what was good to now what is going to be bad. No, you're surviving from what you have currently been through to what you are choosing to move into and to move forward in. And is it uncomfortable? Absolutely. A lot of you have heard me say before, you choose your hard. You choose the hard of staying with what you currently have and knowing exactly what is comprised of that, and that's going to be hard forever. Or you choose the hard of choosing something different and going forward in it, knowing there's a purpose to it, though, and an endpoint and a shift that you're moving towards. And so let's replace that word. Instead of choosing your hard, choose your discomfort. There's a lot of uncomfortable things in life. But choose the discomfort that is going to lead to what you want instead of the discomfort of what we think appeases somebody else, when guess what? They're going to be uncomfortable no matter what because it's in their own thinking. Just like each of us have experienced. Our thoughts can be extremely uncomfortable because the first reference point for our thinking is back to ourself and then that reference against other people that we've been given. I should look like this. I should feel like that. I should have that. I should show up like this. Look how charismatic that person is. I wish I was more that way. Or look how quiet this person is. I wish I was more that way. Or intellectual, or funny, or romantic, or whatever term we want to apply to an idea of a person that we've created. And guess what? Every single person that we're referencing is thinking, wow, look at that person. I wish I was more like them. I wish I had what they have. I wish I was this, that, or the other. Because that's what we've been taught. Not enough just in who you are. And instead, you are. I have yet to see a 2-year-old that doesn't think that the world revolves around them and they are okay with that. That's why we call it the terrible twos, right? Because it's that egocentric aspect of being of, I'm amazing and you are here to take care of me, the rest of the world. But within that, what do you also see in a 2-year-old? Unconditional acceptance, unconditional positive regard for others and the self. They have no problem telling you if they're uncomfortable, but they also have an awareness of how you're responding to them and a recognition of how their actions impact others. Oh, are you okay? Are you okay? Where they learn that? From someone else saying to them, oh, are you okay? Noticing the way I act impacts you. But then we're 40 and doing the same thing. Oh, are you okay? Let me try and fix you. Let me come alongside you. Let me try and make your life comfortable. Meanwhile, stepping outside of everything, Nicole, to kind of go back to what you were describing, that makes me feel like a valuable, authentic human on this planet because I'm trying to make sure everyone else is okay. And in that okayness, it's, do they look happy? Do they look like they're appeased? Am I performing in a way that makes them feel comfortable? And then we end up right back like Jana described with that exhaustion. We've talked in other groups about how microdosing is not about getting to a utopia state of being, because there is absolutely discomfort in the process of recognizing how our thinking has been modified and what we want to do to change that. And Nicole, what I'm so appreciative, and anyone who's hearing this is appreciative of you sharing, is that honesty. It is freaking hard to make choices that we know serve the life that we want, that other people are going to have to make choices for themselves in response to. But if we live in a way that always tries to take away those choices for the other person because we think we're helping them, that's not doing them any service either. And it's impossible. But we think we're helping, but we're not. They have to find that place of making those decisions for themselves. And we don't get to sit in a place of determining what that's going to look like 30 days, 30 minutes, 30 years down the road. The choices that each person makes are for them, and then other humans make decisions for them. And all we have, and hear me when I say this, all we have is the information we have at the time. To look back 10 years in the past and say, man, I can't believe I made that stupid decision. Why did I do that? 10 years ago, you had 10 years less of information. In this moment, all you have is the information that you have right now. And even that amount of information, such as the information that Nicole shared that she has in her life, she knows outcomes of what people can do and what people can choose. But to stay in a state of fear because of information that you have as a possibility is paralyzing. And it is uncomfortable to make some of those decisions. But as you go through and you make one decision at a time, I'm going to take a step in this direction. I call it the information gathering stage. Okay, I'm looking at shifts. I'm going to take a step in this direction and then assess. And then with that information, I'm going to take another step and then I'm going to assess. And you take one decision at a time, one moment at a time. And you notice what the shifts are. And you reflect back to yourself. How is my perspective shifting in this? But giving yourself permission to do that is what does lead to the freedom of the life that you want and giving other people permission to make decisions for themselves too. Any other comments, reflections back to anything that's been shared up to this point? That's a lot to unpack. I think there's some somberness to our discussion today because there is a reminder of that reality that as our choices and how we think and how we show up shift, other people will be impacted by that. But again, let's remove the idea of good or bad because other people have been impacted by everything that we've done. And we're impacted by what everyone else does. And if we can soften some of that impact and shift the reference points, let go of this heightened sense of self-importance and self-awareness. And, if I don't show up in a certain way, everything's going to come crashing down. I'm definitely somebody that felt that way before and saw that. And I didn't see it as a selfish, self-important way of thinking. I saw it as, I'm in charge of all these things and everything depends on me showing up and me doing everything correctly. And what I realized with my own microdosing journey and quieting my own ideas and default way of thinking and rigid way of thinking is that there's actually freedom for other people when I stop trying to be the boss of everything. and thinking that me showing up in a certain way is what everybody else needs, because it wasn't. And I can tell you in 100% honesty that not one company that I left came crashing down after I left. Good for them, right? But that's certainly not what I felt sometimes in certain positions. Man, what I'm doing is really important. And guess what? When I left, what happened? Somebody else took the spot. And they came in, they did things their way, and everything's still going. So it's not that each of us aren't valuable in the experience on this planet, but it is in such a different way than we have been taught that it is. The fear of death is so often a fear of the unknown. Even if you have a existential belief system of what might happen after death, there's still a fear potentially of that, but also a fear of what gap might be left when we're no longer here. And all of that is in reference to other people and their belief systems and their ideas and what we think they think about us. Because not one of, but the most natural part of living is also dying. Our physical body goes back to the earth and provides nutrients back to the earth. It is the life cycle. We are a part of the life cycle. But because of our really heightened thought processes, we as humans have decided that we're more important than any of the rest of the life cycle. Except that once the body is gone, the body is gone. We will not be going into the discussion of anything of belief systems that might be beyond that. But the body as a physical body goes back to the earth. That's all it does. And if we can see that as a contribution to nature in its natural cycle, we can appreciate the people around us and nature and this world and this experience and this planet that we happen to live on, hurtling through space, so small in the grand scheme of things. And yet our idea of our experience is so big and so impactful in our own mind. And this conversation is not to, again, diminish your value. You're here. So be here. Show up in the ways that are authentic to you. But man, try not to let your own thoughts be what brings you down in how you view yourself and how you view your experiences. Because really all that's left when we leave is how did we interact with those around us? Do other people feel more uplifted, more valuable, more confident, more sure of themselves and in who they are and their uniqueness and their possibilities and their abilities because they've spent time with us? Or are they like, whew, well, that was a lot. I better go, change something about myself. So for each one of you, as we're wrapping up conversation today, recognize that your purpose is served because you're here. You don't have to prove anything beyond that. Just be here, show up in what is authentically and naturally you, and that is your purpose. What you choose beyond that is your own choice. How do you want to live? What goals do you want to have? What things do you want to see, do, achieve? Let those be soft. Who you are and how you experience your life cycle on this planet is a choice for each individual. If life is about performance rather than experience, we miss the point. The point being, you're here. Experience it. Managing the ideas of how others perceive us, and then protecting those ideas of who we think we should be, leads to exhaustion, self-loathing, depressive thinking, and loneliness, because it is a constant reflection of the self. Using psilocybin, microdosing, quiets that idea of the self, allows you to be a being rather than a doing. So on that note, I'm going to stop the recording. For those of you that are listening online, thanks so much for being here. If you'd like to join the active discussion, you can do so through comments in the YouTube channel, or you can jump on our website, growyourownthoughts.org, and look at the calendar for other dates, times that you can join in.